Welcome back, guys. It's Kibla Ahmed out here. I'm joined with two guests, one close to home, one far away from home. Got Gilman and Dax here. This is our midweek special, I'm going to call it, because me and Gilman have been talking to invite more people on the show, and I'm going to call this part of the show Passion. And we're going to share some love in the world with the current situation going on, and we're just going to geek out and talk about things that inspire us and motivate us and kind of go on and spread that love to people and try and inspire people in the process. And yeah, before I keep babbling on, I'm gonna let the guest and my other guest take over. Go on, G, man. Tell us.
Yeah, well, look, man, it's good to catch up with Dax, man. I've known Dax for a couple of years now, and shout out to George because he's the one who introduced us.
Hey,
But
George.
when I came to Hong Kong, yeah, when I came to Hong Kong, obviously I expressed my geekiness, and George was like, "Oh, you got to meet my boy, man. You got to meet my boy. He's a geek like you. He loves all that shit. His name's Dax, and da, da, da. You know how George is." And then he
Yeah,
introduced us, and instantly me and Dax just
yeah,
BFFs,
like,
and we ended up geeking out and whatnot. But yeah, man, that it's good to catch up with you, bro, man. I do like, and even with your son, we used to geek out as well. Little D, straight away, I was like, Big D and Little D. He's such a cute, handsome little boy, man.
yeah.
Obviously, he gets it from his pops. Look at this good-looking dude right here. But yeah, how's things though, bro? How you been? How's everything in Hong Kong, man?
Yeah, everything's okay. I guess it's the same as everywhere else in the world. Obviously, not as bad as some places, but I would say things are okay. Life still is going on. It's a new year, and at the end of the day, all you can do is try to stay positive. You can't expect change to happen from 2020 all of a sudden in 2021. But all you can do is really stay positive and push forward, let's say.
Nice, bro.
Yeah.
And
Hey.
I've noticed this little Mr. Fantastic thing you got going on here. I love how you're expressing that, bro. You see that, Kim? Do you see it? I love it.
Yeah, well, it was kind of one of those things where obviously, back in the day, you would always go get your haircuts. And for me now, I'm just kind of like, all right, just whatever. And now it's got to grow out. So I definitely have the gray streak and, you
Don't cut
know,
it, bro.
Mr.
Don't color your hair.
Fantastic, I'll take that. you know?
Bro, don't honestly, maybe I don't know what it was. Maybe back in the days, people wanted to color it and make it all. I say keep it because it looks awesome.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
color that shit. I keep Mr. Fantastic going on.
yeah,
Awesome.
sure. I think my hairstylist back in the day, when I was telling him about the gray streaks, he's like, no man, it's really cool. But in my head, I was always thinking Rogue,
Yeah.
because of the gray streaks. But like I said, Mr. Fantastic, I will gladly take that.
Nice, bro.
Awesome.
Hey, so
Yeah.
what got you into comic books, man? How? Because like like with George and whatnot, he's not mad into it and whatnot. So I don't know the environment that you kind of grew up with. So how did you get into this
Yeah.
geeky comic? Did someone influence you, or did you just catch something and you got into it, or how was your journey start into this
So I,
geeky?
I kind of I kind of just got into it, and it was more discovery for me.
Mm.
So obviously, one of my first comics I would say was the Marvel Comics Presents series.
Yeah.
And so I don't know here. So obviously, I'm from Hong Kong, and here we have a convenience store called Park and Shop. Jimin, you would know. You would
Yeah,
know the store. And obviously there was always the book and magazine section. And so when I was like 10 years old, I was skimming through the magazine section and I found a comic, which was Wolverine and Nightcrawler, which was basically part of the Marvel Comics Present series. And it was one of those old school comics where you could flip them and then there'll be another comic in the back. So yeah, I would say around 10. And when I saw that, I kind of opened the book and started to read it and got really fascinated by it. Truth be told, as my parents would try to make me read books when I was younger, and I was just never reading books. But it was when I picked up a comic book and then I saw there were pictures in the books. It just made it easier for me to kind of read. And that's where my kind of passion for comics kind of began. And I just started to collect them. So the thing with Park and Shop was it's not like your everyday comic book shop where you can turn up at the comic book store and know that certain issues are coming out and you can geek out on all the comics. It was just a random comic hidden between like a bunch of magazines. So for so long, until Hong Kong opened their first comic shop, I used to have to like go into Park and Shop and like look behind all the magazines to see if all of a sudden I can find a comic. And so for me, it was a bit of a treasure hunt and like a bonus when I did come across one. And yeah, so that's how I was introduced to the world of comics, and I started becoming a geek.
That's awesome, bro. I can imagine. I don't know how it was back in Hong Kong back then, but in the UK, with
Yeah.
those kind of convenience stores and the magazines, on the top shelf was always the adult ones. And you know, when as a kid, yeah, you kind of slyly put your eyes up and try and look for it. So I can imagine. I don't know if it was in Hong Kong, but I can imagine Dax be like, "No, no, I'm just looking for a comic book." Secretly looking at me.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm messing. But that's awesome, bro. Because like. I don't know who was your like from what I know, your one of your characters who you love more than
Yeah.
anything is that Spider-Man universe, Venom
Yeah.
and whatnot. Is that your I know you love all of them, but is that your would you say that's your favorite character? Like the Spider-Mans or the Venoms or something like that? And why how did that why is it that characters attracted you
Well,
to
yeah. I
liking
would
it?
say honestly, when I began, it was originally X-Men, right? And so obviously, like I said, when I came across the first Wolverine and Nightcrawler kind of like duo, like to me, I was hooked. And for me, it was all about the stories of mutants and this ability to all of a sudden acquire a power, and then at the same time join a team of people, a team or a school of mutants. That kind of inspired me into the world of comics. And Spider-Man later became like a huge thing for me. But to be honest, I would say like Kibbs, I know you're a huge Batman and Superman fan. It's the same for me. If I had to go with anything, I would always go back to Batman. But if not, I'm wearing my Deadpool hoodie. So I'm a massive fan of Deadpool. But yeah, Spider-Man, Venom, the series, Carnage. Those are key characters for me. Yeah, I just I love them all. I'd say.
Awesome, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Cool, man. And then when I met you, you were working for Fox at the time, right? And I remember I used to make jokes about, oh yeah, just hire me, I'll make you tea and stuff, just get me involved in the universe and whatnot. But you mentioned earlier that you were working with Warner Brothers TV or whatnot, right? And
Yeah,
how was
yeah.
that journey, man? And the inventions of, what
So
you
you,
came
you
up
want
with
you
and
want
stuff.
you want the long story, like because I can tell you what got me to where I was,
Give us
and
the long story,
believe
man. The long story.
yeah. So
Tell us the journey, bro.
yeah, the journey. So for me, obviously being a passionate comic collector, the dream was always to one day become a comic illustrator. And in my family, a lot of us were very artistic, and we followed art. But believe it or not, my mom had different plans for me. She was like, "No, you're not going to do art," and she kept kind of pushing me in another direction. And so many years went by where I didn't pursue art, but then later I started to pursue other courses, and I found myself at one point kind of just helping a family business out. One of my aunts, she lives out in New York, and I was helping her business out for a while. And believe it or not, that was doing hair accessories for women. So I was one of those sales guys that would put like hair accessories in women's hair. Like, here, let me put your hair up, and like this is a nice little crazy crab, or if you want a bobby pin or a shoo. I would kind of be selling that kind of stuff, right? And in the end, I could remember like sometimes when I was having my break, I was so kind of down and out and depressed, right? Because at some point it was like, this is not where my life was supposed to go, right? I was supposed to kind of try to be an illustrator and work for brands like Marvel Comics and all this kind of stuff. And then one of my friends at the time, she was kind of hanging out, and she could see I wasn't really happy. And so at that, I mean, don't get me wrong, helping a family business out, of course, but she could see that, you know, I wasn't really happy. And she kind of asked me what was up. And I told her, you know, I was like, yeah, I told her my dreams of the things that I kind of wanted to do. And she kind of sat me down and she was like, well, what did you study? And on one end, I studied to be a chef. And she's like, well, yeah, clearly you can't work with Marvel Comics being a chef, right? And then I was like, yeah, but I studied marketing as well, right? And she's like, well, there you go. You know, maybe you don't have to be an illustrator. Maybe you might find yourself working with these brands, but doing something else, right? And so for me, all of a sudden, that kind of, like, I don't know why I never really thought of that. Maybe I was just young and dumb at the time, but, you know, all of a sudden it clicked and it was like my whole world opened, right? And so I kind of had a direction as to like the brands I kind of wanted to work with. But at a time when I came back to Hong Kong, basically it was my sister. She kind of she had a friend, and this friend is the one that actually started my entire career, I would say. But it was interesting how it happened because at first, when I'd come back to Hong Kong, I had basically two jobs. I think one was to be a bartender at night while I was teaching English over the weekends. And my sister said, listen, there's an event going down. You know, you're going to meet one of my friends and then basically, you know, have a chat with her and see what you think. At this point, I didn't really know what to expect or where I was going. But I turned up at this event and basically I was looking at it was like an art event or something, right? And I was looking at a piece of art and I was kind of just staring at it. And then a woman comes over to me and she starts talking to me about the art piece. And I obviously start talking to her too. And then she turns and introduces herself and says that she's my sister's friend, right? And I was like, oh, so you're the one I'm supposed to meet, right? And then she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, listen, we've had a nice chat. She's like, it turns out that next week there's going to be a Pixar seminar, right? And you should come down and take a look at this seminar if you get the chance. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And she's like, oh, and by the way, I work for Cartoon Network, right? And I was just kind of like at that time, like mind blown, right? And so I was like, oh shit, you know, Cartoon Network, that's awesome. Like, and I was like, yeah, cool. I'll see you down there next week, right? And so it was the following week I went to this seminar where obviously some of the illustrators from Pixar had turned up, and they were some of the key illustrators for Cars and Monsters University, or Monsters Inc. Sorry, not Monsters University. But I found myself with a team of Cartoon Network there, right? And we were basically sitting down listening to the seminar. And obviously I'm a junior, like, you know, I'm pretty young at that point. And I had no idea what to do. All I knew was that I was pretty excited. And so I was sitting there, and when they took the stage, all I was doing was taking notes, right? And I could see everyone at Cartoon Network, the small group that came, were kind of looking at me like, who's this kid? Or like, who's this guy? And like, you know, why is he sitting there taking all these notes, right? And so I ended up talking to a few of them. And I think the art director at the time and the head of graphics at the time, they spoke to me and found out a bit about my passion for cartoons and comics and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, basically, you know, I kind of explained why I'm taking all the notes, because I didn't think an opportunity like that would ever happen again, right? Kind of sit down with like illustrators from Pixar, especially in Hong Kong. And so they kind of looked at me and they told me at the time, they were like, okay, why don't you continue to take all your notes, right? And at the end of the seminar, you pass us those notes, right? You know, so that basically we have notes, right? And then they're like, and if you could do that, then you've got yourself an internship, right? And so at the time I was like, are you kidding me? Like, sure, right, cool. So I was sitting there and I started taking a whole bunch of notes. And so I got an internship. So at that point, I was working, like I said, I was a bartender at night, and then I was an English teacher over the weekend. And then in the daytime, I was interning at Cartoon Network, where I joined the I joined the graphics department, and they taught me to be a rotoscoper. So that's where I began. I began as a rotoscoper in the graphics department. And then I got to basically cut out all the animations, so Kibbs, you're well aware, like in a second of animation, there'll be 24 to 25 frames.
Yep.
And you have to end up like cutting out each one of those frames for a character to animate the character.
That's right.
And basically that's what I did all day. And until my internship was over, and then I got offered a part-time job. So at that point I was working 3 jobs just to kind of maintain like what I wanted to do, even if it was just starting off as a rotoscoper. Yeah, I guess if you look at the what is it, Cobra Kai or Miyagi Dojo, it's almost the wax on, wax off, sand kind of thing. Right? You start at the bottom, you don't question it, you just do. Right?
Right, yeah.
And so that's where it began, where I was working part-time with Cartoon Network or Turner. And then I left to work with a designer toy company for a while. I think my approach in the industry was that, of course, you don't want to be working 3 jobs, right? So the approach was always to kind of, how would you put it? Kind of like work until you could get rid of one of those jobs, right? So
that's
just
right.
keep working, keep doing your thing, right? Until you could slowly kind of get rid of one, right? And then get rid of the other. And so I worked with designer toys for a while, which specifically urban vinyl toys. So it's a brand here called Toy2R, and they create basically these blank canvas toys for artists to kind of illustrate on and kind of, explore the world of creativity and stuff through toys and art. And so I worked with them for a year until I kind of bumped into my friend, the woman that originally got me the job in the internship. And she told me that the company was launching a movie channel, which was WB India. So basically, she had told me at the time that they were looking for a production assistant, and actually, it if I had known anyone that would be interested for the job, right? Because obviously, when I met her, she was like, "Oh, how you doing? You must love the job now that you're in and stuff." And clearly, if I had left the company at that time, you have to be all like, "Yeah, life is good. I like where I'm at." Right. Yeah. But at this point, when she's like, "Oh, if you know anyone," in my head, I was just thinking like, me. Right? I was like, "Yeah, cool. How about me? Could I apply?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And so I applied for a production assistant role, in which then I was working on WB Movies. Got the job when I was working WB Movies. I then transitioned fully to Cartoon Network, which was interesting because, part of this story is to tell you that, a huge part of my inspiration growing up had been like Saturday morning cartoons or Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon cartoons. And I would find myself like even at this one point while I was actually studying my marketing course out in Australia, I would wake up every morning, pour myself a bowl of cereal, throw on Cartoon Network before heading to school, right? And as I'm eating my cereal, I clearly remember thinking at the time, I'm like, man, like, who are the guys that do this, right? And so obviously when I had gotten that job, I found out that those were the guys that do this, right? Because I'd find myself wishing, I wish I could work with these guys. I wish I could do this, right? And then, when I like transitioned from WB to Cartoon Network, all of a sudden found out that I was doing the stuff that, I thought like I could never do, but somehow did, right?
Awesome.
So, yeah, a lot of that was training from the bottom and really kind of, putting my hand up and going the extra mile to kind of learn, because obviously I didn't go to school for production, film, editing, illustration. Everything was just based off of pure interest and eagerness to learn. And basically that's how I kind of built my career. But yeah, to go to Toonami, that was interesting because obviously Toonami and Cartoon Network is a huge block on the Cartoon Network channel. Like here in Asia and most places, I think people would remember the Toonami block to be a segment in which you could watch cartoons like Dragon Ball Z or a lot of Japanese anime. And here in Asia, there was discussion to start a 24-hour action superhero channel. And it just so happened that basically I was working over lunch at one point, and basically as I was working, my mentor at the time had come in, and he was a bit like flustered, right? And basically I was asking him what was going on, and he's like, "Oh, I just got asked to basically create some kind of sizzle reel because they want to launch this channel, which is," and I was like, "Yeah, what channel is that?" And he told me it was Toonami, and immediately my eyes had like wide open, and I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "By tomorrow I got to come up with some sizzle reel, right?" And at that time, I was just like, I was like, well, if you're flustered at this point or overworked, I don't mind doing it, right? And like, and then he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then at that time, my creative director walked in, right? And he was all like a bit like flustered as well because of these tight turnarounds, right? And he had obviously given the job to my mentor at the time, right? And so obviously you can't just pass the workload off to someone else. He basically grabbed my creative director, and then he was like, "Hey, he wants to do it. Like, is it all good if I pass it to him?" And he kind of gives me this look, right? And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do this. Trust me. Like 24 hours, no problem, right?" Because I'm immediately already digging into the library in my head as to like all the cartoons I'm going to pull out. And he's like, if you think you can do it, go for it. But you got to show me this reel at the end of the day, right? Because we've got to show this tomorrow, right? And I was like, cool, done deal, right? And basically, instead of going to lunch, I ran back to my desk, started uploading all the cartoons that I kind of loved for this channel. And I put together this sizzle reel, and then I came back and then I showed it to him. And then at that point, he was kind of like, paused for a bit. And I think it was, in editing, a lot of it comes down to not just footage, but like music choice, pace of an edit, and impact. Like how you're going to leave, a viewer with some kind of impact. And I ended with this one key shot of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Avengers, right? With like the Hulk smashing down into the screen, and then this Toonami logo appears, right? And I think it just gave him such an impact. At the time, he was taken back, and he was like, "Whoa, this is really cool." So he then took the video and then he showed it to all of senior management because they weren't sure as to whether or not, well, one, how this channel was going to look, but then two, like, whether or not it was something they needed to kind of pursue, right? And basically, after showing that little sizzle reel, everyone got really excited. And then I was asked to kind of, ensure, or I was asked to lead the launch of the channel, which was really cool because that took me back to a time while I was back in New York. And when I was in New York, I used to get home really late, and I used to switch on the television channel and switch to like Adult Swim.
Yeah, that's right.
And Adult Swim would turn into Late Night Toonami. And at that point, as I was just kind of like lying in bed waiting to start my next day, it was another moment when I was saying, like, I wonder who are the guys that do this. I really wish I could do this, right? And only to find out later down the line when I got back to Asia that I would be given that opportunity to launch Toonami Asia.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the hustle. I love it. Because I was telling Kibbs earlier, we were discussing on the podcast earlier about the visualization and knowing what you want to do. That's amazing. You got to have that vision, but the hard work that comes behind it, the hustle that comes behind it is what pushes it. And it's great to hear, man, the hustle, man, free jobs and doing your free jobs and whatnot, and just trying to get through all the way, get into this point. It's fucking amazing, bro. Yeah.
It is.
So what?
It's motivating and inspiring to hear that, because my story is similar to that, where I was in a job I didn't enjoy. I came out of a divorce. I went to Hong Kong, and my inspiration came from Hong Kong to see because my brother had left. Was it just a year after my divorce or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And tragic things tend to hold you down a little bit before you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But it was going to see my brother in Hong Kong because he's made a big move, and in the process being inspired. Shifu Bruce Lee inspired me. I was there on the docks drawing away, and it brought art back into my life, because I stopped drawing from the age of, I started college at 16, and I stopped drawing. I stopped illustration, anything creative. I did go through a phase of using, because I was working for a photography company. So I went from photography to videography to understanding editing. And as you said, it was all self-taught. It was interest that I learned along my journey. But when I got to Hong Kong, I said, I'm going to stop chasing, and I'm just going to start enjoying life a bit more. And I started doing art again, and I started sketching, and I learned how to illustrate again. And it inspired me. And hearing your story and asking them crucial questions as who are the guys that do this?
For sure.
To actually get into a point where, oh my God, shit, I'm doing this.
So it's like you just dive in and just do, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, of course. And the hustle plays so much, because as you said, you were doing 3 jobs, and the goal was to try and take one away so that you could do the other one full time. And you eventually got to that, and the passion shows through that, and the hard work is, you got to put that grind in to kind of achieve those goals. And it was small goals that you had there that you achieved to get to that point. But what a journey, dude. That is
man. And your visualization from New York to Australia to Hong Kong, it's fucking global, man. It's sick. But I think, like, I take away, like, yes, you had the passion for it, and that's amazing, and you never lost that passion. But I love the hustle, man. I love the hustle. I love the fact that, it's not about the money. I was telling kids the same thing. Like, the moment shit started working out for you is the moment you wasn't doing it for money. It was just, I'm doing it for passion. And you were hustling the 2 other jobs, right? The English teaching and the bartender. That's for you to survive. The Toonami and the Cartoon Network. That was just, give me the internship. I'll take internships were free, if I remember, right? Just give me that. I work for free, and that's the hustle. That's what I'm saying. That's what's inspiring. That's what's like motivating, to the fact that it wasn't about the money. I was gonna work for free, and this opportunity for Toonami came up. Cool, I could do it 24 hours. Like, fuck it. I ain't gonna take a lunch. Whatever. You hustle to get it, to get you into this point, that you moved on to that. And that's what I find inspiring. You know what I mean? It wasn't just given to you, or you weren't just like sitting back with income coming from your family. You're like, no, I'm gonna hustle. I'm gonna work my 2 jobs, and I'm gonna do this shit for free, because that's what I want to do. And I think I honestly believe, when you do it for passion and not the money, that's when it picks up for you. And that worked for Kibbs, and it's in your story, it's worked for you as well.
For sure. I mean, to be honest, when I look back, all those moments that were very, like, key to what would happen in my career, most of those, they, I don't know, like, if you were to ask me, like, when I was young, if any of these things would have ever happened, I would have said no. But it was almost what is it? It's almost the what's the saying? It's when it is the visualization in your head. It's basically, the universe has a way of, like, kind of finding you in a way, right? If you can think it, you can achieve it. If you want it bad enough, somehow the stars align, and things will fall into place. And it's exactly what had happened. I could tell you some crazy things from those moments where I find myself, for example, when it came to getting the production assistant job, right? The time when I said, yeah, cool, like I want to apply for that job. I can tell you that, you know, while I was walking in a crowd, right, all of a sudden I heard someone's voice. And when I heard that voice, immediately it registered as the woman that I know. And I looked back, and as I looked back, because she was behind me having a conversation with someone else, our eyes had caught each other, and at that point, that's when the conversation began about this production assistant role. If I had not looked back, or if I did not think about the you know, or that voice didn't register,
Yeah.
I would have just continued walking, and then basically this whole thing would have never happened, right? You know, to everything from the moment where I'm like working late for lunch, right? And then basically, you know, I'm on my way out to grab lunch because I work late, and then I bump into my mentor at that point, and then all of a sudden something happens. I think what it is it's like sometimes you just go with it and dive in and just go, you know. And if it's what you wanted in the first place, yeah, it's pure passion.
No, of course, definitely. I have a similar story in Hong Kong where I was in the Avenue of Stars, and I said, I think Gilman was still working, so I kind of understood what trains to jump on and what ferries to jump on to get over. And I said, I've got my sketchbook with me. I bought it especially with me for the trip to draw the skyline, to draw the buildings. But then when I saw that statue, I went back there almost every other day to sketch it. And I remember people standing around me watching me sketch and telling me it was good. And but the key moment was it was a rainy day, dark clouds. It's quite smoky in Hong Kong. And it was a moment of, it was like a burst of light that hit Shifu.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, Kibbs, you're talking craziness, but that light there showed me something.
Yeah.
That moment, it glimmered on him and me drawing.
Just the
like,
right
it still gives me goosebumps now, dude. Like my heart right now is racing because it was such a, oh man, like a moment of solitude for me and a moment of realization. Because before I didn't understand how religion and the universe and the way life worked. Like I was asking too many questions at that time. But at that moment, a little divine intervention happened there, dude, and it took me over. Like my heart still pounds now, and I still get goosebumps from that moment because I still have that image in my sketchbook, and it like really told me, like, Kibbs, chill.
Yeah, exactly.
Let life just blossom. Let it do its thing. Stop overthinking things and jump at every opportunity you get. And I came back from Hong Kong 6 years ago, and my journey so far is unbelievable. Like when it came to art, I mean, now I'm teaching people online. I just didn't think I'd come to a point where I could share my passion with people. So, and then, you know, the podcast grew. I got more closer with family members, and yeah, your story is inspiring, dude.
No, man, like I've been following you guys online, and obviously I came on to one of your talks with my son before, which I love. And I just love what you guys do. And to be honest, like, you know, you could see that you love what you do, and you're having fun doing it. And that's always key, right?
That's right.
Even G always talks about, you know, the fact that, like, you know, you found yourself when you weren't thinking about the money, but you were just focused on the things that you love, right? You know, I could talk about, you know, parts of my past where I was no longer collecting comic books, and, you know, I was just kind of, you know, messing around, I guess, a lot. But I got to a point in my life where I was thinking to myself, you know, like, when was I last happy? Right. And at that point, I thought about the times that I used to read comics. Right. And from that point, it was all of a sudden like, oh, cool. You know, like, I'm going to go back into the things that I love. Right. And that meant reading comics. That meant like kind of like looking at like treasure hunting at like toys. Right. Or collectibles. Right. and then just kind of geeking out again. You know, I love films, I love cartoons, I loved it all. And at the time when, like I said, from those 3 jobs to even when I was working on WB movies, like, to be honest, like, all I could say was like I had the coolest job, because all I had to do was go to work, watch movies, right? Log those movies, write scripts, and figure out ways to like edit and kind of like get people to watch the film on a Friday or Saturday evening or something,
Yeah.
right? And it didn't get better than that until all of a sudden I moved to Cartoon Network, and then I was going to work and watching cartoons for a living, right? And so that was just like, oh, life just doesn't get better than this, right? But it does. Like, you know, life will have those ups and downs, but at the end of the day, there's the silver linings, and they're the things that you should appreciate. You know, and at the end of the day, if you're not constantly focused on the immediate return, then at some point, like, you'll get to a place in life where you can look back and you can see that journey, and you can be like, whoa, like, I've accomplished quite a bit. And, you know, it doesn't mean it ends there. It's like, it really is always about moving forward and you know, what's next. So yeah, no,
awesome, man.
That inspired me too.
Yeah, I do remember when we used to link up, we used to do our random trips in Mongkok. Every time we used to link up, it's like, let's just meet up in Mongkok, because we used to always go, not even, we used to window shop a lot, right, with the figures. We used to go around window shopping a lot in Mongkok. That was our local place, and then you take Dax, bring Dax along, Little D along, and we'll just chill and just check out figures and whatnot. But all of this has led to what you're doing, like what you got yourself into now, right? Because you set up your own production company now.
That's right.
Yeah, so what's happening with that? Tell us a little bit about that and how that started off, and what's going on, the vision behind the new production company.
Well, it's still early days. I could tell, to be honest, like, you know, okay, like, I could tell you, for example, go back to New York, right? When I was sitting there at the beginning. For me, the brands I always wanted to work for, I said already from the beginning, one was Marvel Comics. A huge one was Pixar, right? So for me, it was Pixar. For me, it was Marvel. Obviously, I was a major Star Wars fan. And then, you know, basically, like, you know, those are the brands I went and wanted to work for. You know, so when I ended up moving from Turner to Fox, I was working with more general entertainment, sports, and factual entertainment. And then I moved towards representing National Geographic, and I was a producer for National Geographic. So I got to do some pretty awesome stuff. You know, I did get to travel quite a bit and get to see places that other people didn't get to see. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like the National Geographic explorers, because those guys are like the coolest guys. You know, they're the ones changing the world and making a difference. I was just fortunate enough to meet them and film with them and do some kind of cool stuff as a producer, right? But if you were to ask me when my journey began, you know, what was next, right? The dream was always to go for Disney, to go for Pixar, to go for Marvel, and all those brands. Those are the brands that I've always wanted to work with my entire life. And I was almost at that point, right? Basically, as you know, with Disney Plus now, National Geographic is part of Disney Plus. So I'm proud to say that I got to work for one of those brands. But like, you know, due to like unfortunate circumstances, I found myself almost, you know, at the gates of Disney, and, you know, and the brands I wanted to work with. But unfortunately, I had to kind of walk away from it. And when I walked away from that, the thought of walking away from the ultimate dream, right, is almost like at the time, kind of how would you say it? It was almost, but I didn't really know what to do. Like, it was one of those moments where you're just kind of like biting yourself in the butt and just kind of being like, oh shit, like, you know, like, I can't believe it. I finally made it, and then now I gotta walk away, right? And so I ended up not taking the job and transitioning to the Disney team. And at that point, I kind of decided to set up my own brand because I'm here in Hong Kong. That brand kind of focuses on one aspect is branded content, and the other is to work on original entertainment. So I've been spending all of 2020 putting together some concepts and ideas, but it's still early days at this point. But yeah, so I started my own.
Exciting times, man. Exciting times. Because that moment, because that dream is quite big.
Yeah.
It was brands that you want to work with, and man, the gut wrenching feeling I got right now, because I feel you. Like I'm like those are like two more things on my bucket list before I leave this world, is to have a comic book cover with Marvel Comics and DC Comics. And for a moment to step, like for you to kind of like, I mean, due to circumstances, but that feeling must have been playing on your head for a little while, man. But it turned into something.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's still early days, but at the end of the day, it's like the way that I foresee it is, I'm still young, and no matter how old I am, right? And if there's anything that I've learned in my career, also being a father, is that you can't plan or prepare too much. You just got to go with it, right? And life will take you down, like or will take you off the beaten path, and you go with that, and you don't know where your journey might end up. So even though I ended up kind of walking away from the brands I've wanted my entire career, you never know, right? Maybe one day opportunity will.
You never know. It's so true. I believe in that. It will probably come back knocking on your door again very soon.
I remember we were discussing it at the time, and I won't go into the personal details, but it was very personal as well. It wasn't just a job transition. And for everyone who doesn't know, right, Marvel and Disney bought all the Fox Entertainment acquisitions, so that was your journey in. But there was going to be some personal changes like relocation and whatnot, and you were thinking about it a lot. But ultimately, and then I'm glad you did this. It was family, right? I think that was one of the main reasons. Like, I can't leave Hong Kong, family, son, and whatnot. But it led to Ascension 7 Media, right? That's the company name. I don't think you even shouted it out yet. So shout outs to the new company name, and Kibbs, you'll pull it into the bio and all the links later. Ascension 7 Media, but
going to be in the
description. I mean, with the way you've hustled, the way your story goes, and you're gonna keep hustling and do what you're doing, but something will in the universe will come back to where it needs to be. You know what I mean? And that's where you hire me to make you tea every day and let me just be a part of that. But I'm not even joking. But I will make you tea. I make a good cup of tea. Just get me involved, bro. And eventually I'll work my way up.
All I could say is, like, if there's one thing I've learned, it's like, for me, my journey like couldn't have happened without the people that I got to learn from and work with. So some of my best experiences have been with people overseas, production crews, like photographers, cameramen, entire crews, and it was really them. Without them, like, I wouldn't have been able to have done half of the stuff that I got to do.
Of course.
So everything from like sitting down and having tea with you, G-Man, on set, it all matters. It's all relative. But I'll obviously get you to do more than that.
One
Dax,
day,
I wanted to ask you a question, because being a father as well, and me being a father recently as well, and geeking out with your son, it must be a trip.
Yeah, it is awesome. Like I could say my son now, it's bizarre, right? Because at this age, like, okay, my son reads a lot, right? And if anything, I'm so proud of him for that, because he's reading proper books at my age, like, and he loves it, right? At my age, I couldn't, right? And that's why when I found comics, it was amazing for me, right? And so I have like this mass collection of comics. And growing up, I was always like, oh yeah, one day I'm gonna give this to my kids, right? And, I got my card collections. I got it all, and I'm like, this is gonna go to them, and like they're gonna geek out and they're gonna love it, right? But my son's a huge fan of Archie comics, right? So I'm all like, oh, I don't have Archie comics. I've got like Spawn. I've got like X-Men. I got Spider-Man, and like it's all there. But in the end, I'm like, all right, cool. Like he's down with Archie. I'm down with Archie too, right?
Yeah.
And Archie's great, right? But it's for me, like, there's sometimes I'm a bit like, ooh, like, like this sucks because I could show you like these great comics, and he's like, yeah, it's cool, I'll read it at some point, right? My son's a big gamer, I'd say. So that's where I hope to kind of connect and bond with him more.
Yeah.
He's got games he likes to play. I've got games I like to play. We try to meet halfway. At the moment, he's getting me. Well, I bought Cuphead, and for me at the time, I don't know if you know, Cuphead's a really hard game. And
I'm not familiar with that one, bro. Is that a Nintendo Switch game? Is that a Nintendo game?
I think it's on multiple platforms, but it was on the Switch, so I ended up buying that. And for me, I mean, it's known to be pretty hard, and so for me, it was hard. But then, he's now playing it, and he's good at it, right? So he's like, that's where I'm like, damn, like I thought I was good at gaming, but he's like pro, right?
They pick it up quick. They're like, I feel like the next generation have a leaping head start because we didn't really grow up with the tech, did we? Because we grew up with the books and the comic books. So, like now, when I see my daughter, who is just recently turned 2, know how to use an iPad and knows what app to open to write and draw.
Yeah.
Hold up, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't even know how to use. Didn't even know the iPad could do illustrations until the job I got into.
Well, we started off with what do you call it, Atari or Spectrum, which was A and B or something. 2 buttons, not too complicated. 2 buttons, right? And then when our advanced one was Mega Drive, which was left, right, up, down, left, right, ABC. That was our technological advancement. With the kids these days, they got touch screen, move this here, press that button to bring this app up. Like they got an advancement in regards to technology. They're not starting with 2 buttons. They're starting with 50 and 100 or whatever.
I'd say like well my son was like a kid, baby. So he's like 11 now, right? And now he's too cool for me, right? but when he was young, on PlayStation, it was Lego Batman, right? So to me, that's still like an awesome like Lego game. But there was a moment where, as a baby, like at first it was like you watch them play and they don't know what they're doing yet. They just love all the colors and the characters. But then there's this one moment where all of a sudden you see that they start to get it. And once they get it, then all of a sudden he's like playing Lego Batman, and he's like collecting all the coins, and he's smashing all the bricks, and then he's like getting all through the levels. So now he's like a Fortnite pro, and like, in the end, like, if I'm like, oh, like show me Fortnite, like I want to try playing with you. Like he's just like, no, Dad, like no. And I'm just like,
stay in your lane, Pop. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, that's why he's like, all right, why don't we play Cuphead? And then I'm like, really? Like, shit, Cuphead's kind of difficult or whatnot, right? And then so he's got his games, I've got my games, right? He's I guess I get in trouble to get him to play games like Diablo and all these other style games. But yeah, it's cool. We like it's good to have a boy that I can kind of geek out with, especially kind of show him movies that I grew up watching. He might be like, oh, we're gonna watch another old movie again, and like, and I'll be like, yeah, man, but these are great. These films are great, right? But yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to get to that stage. I mean, now 2 years old, still registering a lot. But when we play Rocky, It's like this moment because when the training montage comes up, she actually does the running and the push-ups and
That's awesome.
screams Rocky, and it's like, oh my god, man, she's like really getting into it, and it's made me fall in love with the movies again as well. And I know all of us, we love our movies, and like I feel like Rocky is like one of them stories that everybody's gonna get along with because there's a part of us in Rocky.
Yeah.
Is always pushing forward and fighting, and I love the fact that it keeps coming back to us, and it's grows with us during the generation. So
for sure,
yeah, that's one of my favorite videos. I was saying to Kibbs, there was a while back where I had to go training, I had to do my training, but I wasn't motivated, right? And you know me, I love my training, but I just was like, I can't bother. And then I just watched a video of my little niece reacting to Rocky 2 and just running and jumping and saying, yeah, Rocky, yeah. And I was like, I'm pumped. I'm going to fucking train now, man. So I love that video. Even that just inspires me and whatnot, man. Amazing.
No, it's brilliant. I've got actually another question for Dax. It was regarding you've recently got into illustration, I see, dude.
Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah. Like, so for me, like, obviously I told you that I'd always wanted to be an illustrator. And believe it or not, I hadn't drawn since high school. I stopped drawing. I think that was when, back in the day, when I was constantly being pushed away from art and to learn business and all these other practical jobs, I guess, or whatnot, right? So I kind of just stopped, and believe it or not, I have a good friend. He's got an amazing story. At some point I can introduce you guys to him.
That'd be great.
Yeah, he's a basically he works with DreamWorks Animation. And for him, we grew up together. He's got an interesting story where, for example, he originally was into music, but he went back to school to study graphics, 3D design and all that kind of stuff. And then he's got an interesting story where, he's worked with some major films, on some major film productions, but he's currently with DreamWorks. But he, like, when I was out in LA, he took me on a tour to DreamWorks kind of studios. And it was just really great to see because, at the time, and I believe he was telling me how, like, the staff are encouraged to explore their creativity. The areas where, like, if you wanted to sit down with, like, artists and illustrators to learn how to draw, you could. And so his art and illustration kind of was encouraged in where he worked. And so when I saw him draw, I was inspired because I was just kind of like, oh wow, this is amazing, right? And at the same time, then he ended up pushing me a bit to kind of re-explore the drawing aspect again. And so for me, like, he'd send me some books on illustration, but really just encouraged me to kind of go ahead and just start drawing again. I wouldn't say I'm great at it, but
seeing the process, dude, you're starting from scratch, which is always the learning curve and always the hardest part. But then I saw the progress, and I'm like, oh, dude, he's like really pushing it, and I love it, dude. That's as an artist, it inspires me as well to see, like, you had that break, as you said, and I had the similar break. And what inspired me was when I was at my mum's house, I went into the loft. I took some boxes out, just trying to filter through things, and I saw my artwork from when I was 15 years old, and I was like, wow. I was actually a really good artist. Like, my uncle inspired me originally to get into what got us into comic books and movies, but my artwork, I was like, wow. And then I ended up just sketching, and I started from scratch again as well. I was learning how to do eyes and lips and hands. I used to hate hands and feet. I hate doing foot. And then learning into digital, like 2020 said to me, the job said, look, we're going to put you on furlough.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to lose my job. I was like, okay, I don't know nothing about this, but you know what? I've got time with my daughter. Most dads don't get that chance to spend that much
That's for
time.
sure. Yeah.
So I jumped on some digital illustration classes and pulled out my iPad, and I was like, wow, this thing does amazing things.
Yeah, well, that it's the same. Like, because obviously I've seen your illustrations, and I'm a huge fan. And like for me, like if I'm a big fan of just illustrators in general. I love artists and creatives. More importantly, comic artists as well, right? And so like I could only hope, if I could go back to basics and learn and do that, like I should actually. I kind of want to continue to do that. But it really was, as you said, the digital aspect of once I came across like the Procreate app from my friend who told me to download the app. Because obviously I took courses on Photoshop and Illustrator, so I kind of understood the basics of layers and all that kind of stuff. But just having an iPad on in the palm of your hand with a pen, and buying a screen protector that has the same texture as like paper.
That's
right? All of a sudden you're just like, whoa, right? And then from that point, like, like the fact that you can work on multiple layers, and on top of that, just kind of, just like erase or work with different pens and kind of just sketch quickly. It's really helped even people like me who haven't drawn or done anything for a while. As long as you understand the basics, like you can really push illustration to like a new level in the digital world, or digital art realm.
But it's good.
Yeah,
it's good to see it. When I see everybody picking up new things and wanting to try different things, and I mean your story from like it links now. For me, I've got a better understanding of where your journey started.
Yeah.
And to where it's come back to, because now you are doing the odd illustrations and learning about it again. It's like, oh my God, he's coming back to it now. So, it's weird. The universe, as you said, it works in such a way where it interconnects somehow, man. It's a big, massive, our own universe is created.
So, for sure. For sure.
Absolutely amazing.
And then I hope I can create at least many more if I can get some pitches out there and hopefully get them greenlit. We'll see.
Of course, that's the main thing, isn't it? I mean, it's still there. So on my wall it says Marvel and DC Comics, and I mean, lucky enough, I have got to do some things in 2020 with DC, their UK office, and some social media stuff and.
Like you've gotten to see some pretty fantastic like people, man. Like
yeah, man.
Like
I've had a I mean early just before I mean I think the early 2020 for the Birds of Prey to meet the characters from the film, Margot Robbie and all of them, it was just absolutely mad. But just to meet Jim Lee.
Jim Lee, man. That's
awesome. My God, Jim Lee. So I remember going to the Birds of Prey premiere, and shout out to the Geek still. Warner Brothers UK for hooking that up for me, because I got to meet my favorite artist in the world, dude. Like I freaked out. I didn't know what to do, because I remember on last week's podcast when we spoke to the Geek still, we were speaking to Grant Morrison and Dan Dido from DC Comics, and we were talking about the universe and the film, and then he just saw me run off. Because they were like, I was like, dude, shit, that's Jim Lee. I didn't know he was in the country. And like I ran towards him and I was like, dude, like I didn't ask for a picture or anything at the time. And I was like mind blown, because I was like, dude, your artwork, and you probably hear it all the time. And the guy's so humble, and he just leveled down. He was like, "It's cool, man. Like, chill, relax." I didn't know what to say. I freaked out. That was
cool. Just guy. Cool.
He was like, just chill, and then like, I was like really polite, and was like, "You must hate this dude. Like, can I ask your permission for a picture?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's cool. That's fine." And I'm like, "Why am I freaking out like this for?" But it was such a pleasure, because
I think a lot of us would be freaking out, man. I think even when if I get like the person I follow on Instagram to like one of my comments, I'm all like, oh, they like it.
It's so true. It's so true because I don't know. It's weird because like we come in from an era where we love pop culture. I mean, it plays a big part of our lives. Our backgrounds tells us about our lives. But to like we came to a point in our lifetime where social media is massive because it's actually you didn't think you could meet somebody like that. I never thought I'd be able to meet somebody like that. To cross paths with somebody because you kind of put them on a bit of a pedestal. I try not to. We automatically do that, but to get to meet them and geek out with them. I mean, over the years, I've got to meet a lot of my favorite artists and writers. Frank Miller, who was one of them as well. I am so happy I got to meet Frank Miller as well. Who else is there? There's Todd Nark and then Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future. I suppose you guys already know. I always talk about Back to the Future. I love that, and the universe got me to meet him. So thank you so much.
And Kevin Smith.
Do you find like
Kevin Smith, Mark Bernardin,
when you're just yourself and like you're speaking with them, it's when you're no longer being the fanboy geek that all of a sudden like you realize actually they're also fans and geeks of other things and like
of course I think Kevin Smith showed me that and Mark Bernardin. Mark Bernardin, I met him a couple of years ago. He came to a Comic-Con and we just had we just joked the whole time we were there. He was just one of us. He was like, I'm just one of you guys that love this shit even more. And then the same thing with Kevin Smith. Like I was nervous again. I was like, oh my God, this how the hell did this happen?
Yeah.
How? Like, because I got the phone call like really last minute. Luke the Geek is still, I'm his sort of Jimmy Olsen, so I'm his camera guy. He calls me, he goes, Kibbs, Kevin Smith today. And I'm like, what, Kevin Smith? Like, I'm not going to hold the camera. I'm going to be shaking. And they were like, I can't take no tripods. And I'm like, how the hell are we going to do this? Because I've got Kevin Smith in front of me and I have to hold a camera for an interview. And I was like, okay. Luckily, we found some chairs that we could use as a stabilizer because I was how can I not take a tripod? They didn't want much.
Get creative. Get creative.
And man, Kevin Smith again, down to earth. I mean, the guy just like I told him I was going to be a dad, and just gave me a massive hug, and it was like, man, enjoy it, dude. Like, really take that moment in as a father, and make sure you're like, just be there,
Man, it's almost like he was supposed to start with you, right? But he was in that moment with you to give you the hug you needed, right?
Exactly. So, they're big geeks just like us, and I love that because once you kind of bring it down to that level, like it's hard not to put them on a pedestal because these are the guys that inspired your creativity or when you're listening to them. But to kind of it's like I've met people that haven't been humbling and quite difficult, but I can only understand the situation. But then you meet these guys and you're like, oh man, they're actually really cool. They're really down to earth. So
I could tell you, like there was a time I regret it. It's my biggest regret, even though I try not to live in regret. Was the time where we got. This is back when I was working with Turner Cartoon Network, and we had just launched Toonami. But it turned out that I'm not. Do you know who Sam Register is? So Sam Register is the executive producer for a lot of Warner Brother animations.
Okay.
And he came out with things like Teen Titans and actually all the Warner Premiere movies you see. He's the EP.
Oh yes.
I think he was, he's like I would say top dog. But he came to visit the office and we got to sit down where he was showcasing some of the top animation talent to come out of Asia. While I think just before they had launched DC Nation. So they had all those short animated films at the time. And I don't know if you'd ever seen things like Batman of Shanghai or what. Yeah, so he was like showcasing some of that stuff when it just came out, and telling some stories, and I had like all these questions, but I just like I choked, right? Because like he was there, and he was like, anyone have questions, and I was like
Oh,
no, right? I saw it all anyway, right? But in the end, like sometimes I was like, man, if I just gone over and said like, like, or introduced myself or something. So when you got to see like Jim Lee, like you did the right thing, just kind of really just go straight out
just
there
go
and be
for it,
like, hey,
man. Like you really,
exactly,
it was that opportunity that was given by the universe. Well, I would say religiously in a different way, but
yeah,
it just happened so quick because I didn't realize while I was watching that movie, somebody was
yeah,
calling my name in the corner and said, Kibbs, Jim Lee's in the house. But I
Jim,
didn't hear that because we had the
yeah,
cast of Birds of Prey.
yeah,
Hard not to take your eyes off the cast of Birds of Prey.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure,
and I'm like, Kibbs, Jim Lee in the house. And I'm like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Who is this person screaming my name? And I didn't know who it was.
yeah,
And then as we were leaving for the night, and speaking to like Dan Dido and Grant Morrison's, these are guys like created the DC universe towards the past 10 years.
yeah.
Speaking out with them and just Jim Lee kind of swiftly walking past, I was like, the hell? How did this happen? And then I just, yeah, you're right. You just have to go for it. I mean, I learned
For sure, man.
my wife put me on this course, and it was a free course, and it was
Boys, just carry on. I'm gonna go take piss real quick.
yeah.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I was just like, let me find the right time to say I'm quickly going to the toilet, but I need to go right now, otherwise it's going to be an accident on the podcast.
I'll go and quickly come back and
All right, I'm back. Cool.
we'll wrap up soon because I know it's what time is it over there for you, Dax?
It's 9:15.
All right, man. You want to give you the rest of your evening, but yeah. So my wife put me on this course, and it was about stepping up to the occasion.
Yeah, yeah, nice. You gotta send me that course, dude.
Yeah. So that.
You should let the world know about this course. Stepping up to the occasion, man.
Yeah. No. I mean, I can't even remember that. It was about 6. Oh, hold up. I'm gonna get myself wrong here. My wife's gonna get me in trouble. So 5 years ago when I met her, and it was about my transition from working in retail and not going for my passion. It was just after I came back from Hong Kong. I pursued my comic book world career and kind of put everything into one basket and said I'm going to go for this. But there were certain things that I couldn't still overcome, and that was public speaking and jumping at opportunities when you got it. Because as you said, sometimes you're going to take something, it may not work out. So
yeah, exactly.
you need to keep moving forward and you need to try new things. And I suppose I was a bit shy and not that confident in what I was doing. And I think the moment I went to South Africa for 3 weeks, it was our honeymoon.
Yeah.
I had left my previous job. I just left.
Yeah, yeah.
So she knew that I wasn't happy at the job, and she was like, "Just leave." And I was like, "How can we do that? We just got married. Like this is a very harsh decision." But she saw it in a way that something will come up. And while we were in the the Blythe Canyons, I think in South Africa, which is next to Cougar Park, and I got this call on my phone while we were in the mountains, and the receptions was really bad. And it's the company I work for now. And it was so random. They're like, "Oh, how would you like to come in for an interview?" And I'm like, "Hold up, how did this happen?" Like, got a job interview lined up just as soon as we come back from holiday.
Yeah, yeah.
I came back and we went for the interview, and yeah, I've been working with them ever since. But they've bought into my passion of geekiness as well, which is really cool. Yeah. And I've become.
You definitely got to be you, man. Like I found, like even it's weird because even in my industry, I probably wasn't so much myself amongst like the people that I worked with. That was simply because I'd started from the bottom and I was learning as I went, and I had like much to prove for myself, right? Again, you had to, like, this is a guy coming from working 2 jobs, like 7 days a week,
Yeah.
just to sustain a job that you're passionate about, right? And so in the end, it was like, where most people saw it as work, I saw it as like, that was my opportunity, and I couldn't kind of like let that go so easily. I had to take it seriously. But I would honestly say that while I was doing everything that I did in my career, it was all about like kind of, there were times where I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I was just kind of diving in, going like, I'll figure it out as I go. But only to find out in the end, like, that's what we're all doing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it was like, once you realize that, realize that everyone's always right? Even some of the people that you fear approaching, we're all human. Do you know what I mean? And
That's right.
some people, they can choose to be bad people if they want, whatever. Who cares? They're not really worth it. But just always be yourself. And I think now in life, I'm a bit more open to being myself, and the people that I've kind of hung out with in my life, they know me, So in the end, it's like, I think now if those opportunities arise and like you do see like celebrities, it's fine to geek out, right? It's fine to kind of, just kind of be you, but at the same time also be a bit professional.
No, totally, exactly that.
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's man. It's. I've got to see a bit more of an insight on your side, and I hope the listeners, kind of take that passion and love and the grind and know that it does pay off. Hard work does,
You
but
get
you
to do
still
some
got to keep
amazing
on top of
things.
it.
Sure. Yeah. You really do get to do some amazing things. You just don't hold back, and don't be ashamed. Even if you don't know, you'll learn as you go.
Cool.
And you'll come back with some pretty cool stories.
Yeah.
And maybe a few scars, but scars are cool too. Right?
Scars are very cool. I do like scars.
Yeah.
But I was going to say another one while we keep it on the on before I close this is your first model that you got, because I know we love collecting our models,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I call them toys because some people get offended.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was if you do remember, what was your first model that you got and you were like, oh man, I love this?
Oh, okay. You want me to show it to you? I
Yeah,
can show.
right, that'd be great.
Okay. It is Carnage. So I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to Sony's, Maximum Carnage.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do me right. Do me justice or something. But I've been waiting a lifetime to see him take center stage.
Yeah.
So this is one. I'll show you a few if you want.
Go for it, man.
This one's one of my prizes. One of the first I got, and it's still an amazing piece. To me, it's beautiful. Marvel Universe Carnage, number 133 from 1,200, or 1,033 from 1,200. This one I'll show you. Where is it? So when I used to work with Turner in the main lobby, they used to have a display cabinet.
Yeah.
And while I went down to get my coffees, I would see this piece, and I would always be like, ooh, I want that, right? And actually, it was like a Batman DC Direct.
Yeah.
And so for me, I loved it. It was pretty old school. But it just reminds me of the time I used to work at Turner, and I would see it in the main lobby. Awesome. So this is the one I got. But yeah, I got a few, but
I don't want to mess up your display, dude. So
no, it's pretty easy. But then, yeah, you saw you saw the one review I did, the one that I managed to get.
That's right.
That I was eyeing as a kid, as a 10 to 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
That was Randy Bowen's Batman on a gargoyle statue.
That's right. Yeah.
That's my pride and joy. It's got its own like
Section.
section over there under the spotlight as he kind of like, creeps on top of the gargoyle and stuff.
Awesome.
But yeah, the Carnage was the first one.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, guys. I think it's going into the late evening for Dax, and Gilman will probably want to go toilet again soon. Guys, guys, make sure you check out everything in the description, guys. Make sure you go follow everybody's pages. I want to thank everybody who's joined me on the call today. Dax, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Listening to your story, and I'm hoping the feedback I get from the viewers is something of passion and love, and helping people push forward and doing things that they love doing and being themselves. And your story is inspiring, dude.
Thank you.
Give you kudos, dude. Honestly,
thank you, man. No, I'm happy. I'm happy to come on, and I'd love to geek out more. So anytime you want me here, I'm down to.
Awesome. So I think we should get you reoccurring, because there's a lot of stuff coming out at the moment, and we love our movies.
Yeah.
Nice to talk about some old movies. So we should arrange another one. Let's talk about some old 80s and 90s movies that we love. I think that'd be a great addition to the show. But yeah, no, awesome, man. I can't thank you enough on the show. Guys, make sure you click on the links in the description box. This is going to be on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, if you want to see our wonderful faces. No, massive thank you for joining the Brothers Geek Out podcast. And no, thank you so much. Thanks, guys, man. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Cheers, Dax. Well, it's good to catch up with you.
Yeah, we'll catch up in a bit.
Yeah, definitely. Guys,
For sure.
Take care of yourself. Have a nice evening, Dax. Gilman, I'll probably catch you later on.
See you.
Peace.
Peace.